So I'm here live today with Matt Eaton. And
Okay.
Here he comes. He's coming back. Just getting everything set up.
All right.
Awesome. The chat's all running and everything else. So I think we are good to go. Hopefully a couple of people will hop in. Get your son to put some shout outs. Okay.
Yeah, I know Kurt Gearhawk was going to watch.
Awesome.
So I know there's a few people out there. I told my students.
Sweet.
Since I left them early, I told them to log in and check it out. So hopefully they come in and watch it live stream either through Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube.
Perfect. Well, we're going to get started. Matt's back with his hat and his new kicks. He's got some awesome new tennis shoes too. So Matt Eaton is a former Sloss Metal Arts Foundry Program Coordinator. That's a mouthful. And a contemporary sculpture, printmaker, and art educator who is currently an assistant professor at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He received his Bachelor of Fine Arts from New Mexico Highlands University, a professional printer's certificate from Tamarind Institute, which I'm so envious of, and a Master of Fine Arts with emphasis in sculpture, Georgia State University, which I have a lot of friends down there, and a Master of Arts in Art Education from the University of New Mexico. I think he's had more training than I have at this point. I feel like I've been in school almost my whole entire life.
But my brother-in-law gives me a lot of trouble about being a professional student. And I almost told him I'm considering getting an educational doctorate in
Nice.
in conflict resolution, which I thought that might be fun. Yeah. I have some experience in that. So
well, that's awesome. His sculptural work is rooted in contemporary cast iron arts movement, which is where we met back in 2018. I knew about Matt for a while, but we actually got to meet in 2018 at the International Cast Iron Conference in Scranton, Pennsylvania, where we all met for a lunch at a local hot dog stand where they were doing chili dogs or whatever they called them up there.
They were like Coney Island chili dogs or something.
And so we got to chat and hang out. And then a few months later, we got to spend about 3 weeks at Atelier Himson in Germany. So we were pouring iron, visiting a lot of the local sites, chatting about art, and eating tons of pork. So I can't wait to catch up with you, Matt.
Oh, I know. I'm excited.
Well, y'all have had a pretty hard winter out in New Mexico. I don't know about you, but I know David Lobdell had quite a bit of snow. How about y'all?
Well, you know, we actually had an unusual amount of snow, but I live down in Albuquerque and I commute up to Santa Fe. So Albuquerque is always like, compared to like where David lives, is 20 degrees warmer.
Oh, wow.
Typically. Because we're at a much lower elevation and I'm in like a valley with mesa on one side and mountains on the other.
Oh, wow.
And so we're like down in this pocket where we get a lot of warm air. So whenever David like posts pictures of snow, I'm like going outside and having coffee in my short sleeve shirt here in Albuquerque. So, but it hasn't been the winter that we need though. It's terrible because you know, we're a drought stricken state and we rely on snowpack so much.
Yeah.
And we haven't gotten the snowpack that we really need to sustain the rivers that feed all the agriculture. So I think everyone's getting a little tense, and we're worried about a bad fire season too.
I can imagine. That's wild.
Yeah, it's dry. It's really dry. We had some rain. Like New Mexico is funny, Lauren, because you can have like all 4 seasons in one day. So like yesterday, or is it? Yeah, it was or day before yesterday. It started out kind of nice, and then we had a hailstorm, and then it snowed, and then it rained, and then it got sunny. All in one day in Santa Fe. and it was very isolated. So we crossed one road and it was hail.
Uh-huh.
And then I had to put it in 4-wheel drive because the road got super icy real quick. And then when we crossed the road back going to school, and we were getting tacos because we have this taco place we like to go to. And we went back to school and it was like nothing happened. And it was only like 5 minutes away.
I know. The 2 times I was in the Phoenix area, I was there in November, so I can definitely confer that you can have 4 different seasons in one day. It's wild.
Yeah, it's nuts. So it's hard sometimes when you're teaching, and we're trying to do all our teaching outside right now because social distancing and COVID, which that's been a pain in the rear. But it's been a good semester, I think. I think our students are tired. I think teachers are tired. I think everyone's tired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How has that been? What's up?
How are you guys doing over there?
Oh, it's been pretty wild. I did teach like a hybrid class online and in person at Shepherd over the fall, and then we've just been doing Zoom classes as far as the local cultural arts center and stuff like that. So trying to translate printmaking into like a at-home thing, especially like dry point and stuff like that, has been a major pain in the butt.
Yeah. I mean, what my colleague, and he's a super good friend of mine, Neil Ambrose Smith, he's our printmaking professor, and he did a kitchen printmaking class. So he was doing all these really simple, some of them experimental, even maybe touching on to like doing mochilito. I don't know if you've ever heard of mochilito printing. So. It's wood lithography. Yeah, really kind of cool. So you can print on plywood using grease crayons and different types of things.
Wow.
And print on wood, and it pulls up a little bit of the wood grain because some of it takes a little bit of ink, and it's a really interesting process. You got to check it out. I'm trying to think of there's this woman developed it, and it's been kind of like really kind of blossomed into like this interesting, almost, well, it's not a very consistent printmaking practice, so you couldn't like get like precise additions off of it, but just the fact that you can print off of a piece of plywood is
yeah, I definitely need to figure that one out. I was messing around with trying to introduce like tin foil or aluminum foil lithography to my students. They didn't really care for it too much, but
yeah, a good friend of mine, she's a pretty well-known artist, and I've known her since my time at Tamron, and she's actually my friend Neil's mom, Jean Quick-to-See Smith, and I guess she got sidetracked the other day from her painting. She was doing aluminum foil lithography in her kitchen and watching YouTube videos. So it's a thing. It's fun. I mean, I think this whole pandemic and social media and all these things have really like taught people to be more creative in simpler ways to I don't know, stay in a creative mindset, which has been really difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Sure. As far as like exhibitions and stuff like that, I know we were in the process of trying to go virtual with the National Cast Iron Conference and everything, which turned out really well. Have y'all had a lot of exhibitions and everything canceled out y'all's way?
God, honestly, right when the pandemic hit, I lost a lot of opportunities. I was going to be installing a piece out at Sculpture Trails, and I was going to do a workshop, and that all got canceled, which I'm going to go back and do that this summer and bring a piece out to Jerry. And no, but I lost a few shows, and I lost some artist talk opportunities because everything just stopped. It was hard. I lost out on things that I was expecting. I kind of count on my summers to like be able to do things and make a little extra money and support my art habit. And it was dry. And then, everyone had to, if you're in teaching, you had to like move everything online within like 2 weeks. Yeah. It's like, all right, you got 2 weeks, turn your intermediate and advanced sculpture class to a completely online only format. It was like, how am I going to do that? And thank God, I don't know, that the networking that we have just within, the cast iron art community is a very tight, network of people. And then they opened up that studio arts teaching during an age of social distancing, which was a great,
that helped a lot.
Yeah, that was a great Facebook page because you realize you weren't alone in your struggle. And there was a lot of people within our community that were very much a part of like posting things. And thank God for Jenny Hager Vickery, because she posted a thing and I was like, that's a great idea. I'm totally stealing that and going only alternative sculpture materials. And it turned out to be a really fun assignment. So I got to give a shout out to Jenny for that one, because that became a saving grace to salvage my sculpture students that were scattered like sticks in the wind. So, yeah.
Well, let's back it up. I want to know all about you as far as like where it all began. Are you originally from New Mexico? What really got you into the iron bug? What bit you?
Oh God. Okay. I might have to like share. I might have to flip my camera around because I still have the picture or the flyer for my first iron pour. But
wow.
I was a printmaking student at New Mexico Highlands University, and I was pretty much all about printmaking. I was doing etching and lithography and trying to combine the two. And outside the art building, that's where all the kids smoked and the teachers too. And I'd sat out there, and David Lobdell came out, and he was like, "You ought to take my foundry class." And I was like, "I'm really not interested in doing foundry or sculpture. My friends are doing it. I get it. It's cool." And then he was like, "Well, I really need one more student or else they're going to cancel my class. And I want to cancel my class." And I was like, "All right, I'll take the foundry class as long as I don't have to do any of that mold making and casting stuff. And you just let me do whatever, I want." And so that's kind of how it began. And how I even ended up at Highlands University was almost accidental. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, my whole life. And my dad bought a property, a small ranch, because he was an attorney and he had a big case up there. And so he ended up purchasing a property so he can operate his, lawyer business out of this place and be able to, stay up in the Las Vegas area. And I was in high school. And when I was in high school, we got to do this thing called a senior experience, to where you go out in the working world and you're supposed to like volunteer your time to, go work for, I don't know, some people worked with the engineers, doctors, and, all these fancy jobs that I was not interested in. I ended up going up there my senior year and tearing a house down and rebuilding it and spending my summer. I didn't know if I was even going to go to college. And my dad suggested I go to Highlands University. I was like, "There's a university in Las Vegas, New Mexico?" And he was like, "Yeah, in the middle of town. Like, where have you been?" And so I applied, and they were really desperate for students at that time period in the 90s. And I started school, and the first person I met was my advisor. Her name was Catherine Klinger, and she teaches up at the College of the Atlantic now, up in Maine and Bahaba. And she immediately grabbed me and said I was going to be an art student. And that was fine with me. My mom was an artist, and my aunt's an artist, and
Nice.
I always did art. So I ended up going to Highlands University, and I really got into printmaking. And then David snatched me up, and here I'll show you some of the. I got some of the work I made because I made everything like prints. Let me see if I can flip my screen around here. There it is. There's the button. Here, let's go back here. I'll show you. This is my backyard.
Nice.
Super sunny today.
That is
but
awesome.
this was like one of the first pieces I made.
Oh, cool.
And I basically made a skewed geometry of stuff based on drawings. And then I would stick them face down in a sand pit, and I'd pour aluminum around the steel and connect everything.
Oh, wow.
And I kind of just kept going with that. And I like did a whole bunch of them. Like here's another one I did that finally got back from David. It was behind the building for a long time. But everything I made, I didn't do sculpture. Everything was 2-dimensional. And then I started making things on a stick. And David always made fun of me because he said I'm making lollipops. And I just wasn't into, I didn't catch the casting bug. Here, let me flip this back around until, later. And, going through David's class, he took us everywhere. I mean, that was the coolest thing is he, was like, hey, let's go to Kentucky. What are we going to do in Kentucky? He's like, we're going to go to an iron pour. Like, all right, I'm game, like, so that was my first iron pour was here. I'm going to go over. I'm going to show you I still have the picture. Jack Gron laughed his ass off because he was like, oh my God, you still have that poster? I was like, that was my very first introduction to cast iron. And it was really cool. I'm going to my dark studio. Let me turn on a light. So here's the poster from my first iron pour. April 12th, 1996.
Wow.
And it was Jack Gron was there. This is my studio, by the way. It's a huge mess of stuff.
It's cleaner than mine currently.
Yeah. Well, I got a 3-car garage,
Oh, wow, yeah.
So it's actually a nice space. But yeah, that was my first, David drug me and Aaron Wados. Aaron, I'm sure. Aaron went to school with me. We all went to Kentucky. And Wayne Potraz was there. That was when I first met him, and Tom Geip. And I know that there was some other young kids like me that were there that, are still in it. Like, Allison Kirby was there. And that was her first iron pour too. So, I mean, and I met Andrew Marsh there because Andrew was a senior at UK getting ready to move on to grad school. I met most of the core community that I still associate with to this day.
That's so wow.
Yeah. And, and then I really got into it, and they made fun of us because I was still pouring stuff in the dirt, which everyone thought was kind of stupid. When I was in Kentucky, they're just like, well, what are these guys doing? They don't even have molds. They're just going to pour it on the ground. And I made this great piece and I actually sold it. So, I don't sell a lot of, I don't sell a lot of artwork, but I actually sold the piece. My first cast iron art piece ever got sold to a person in Pennsylvania. So, but yeah, and from then on, I mean, we went everywhere. I ended up going to Georgia State University for an iron pour to look at the school. And it was cool because I was like, I'm going to go to school here, for sure. I thought I was going to go to school at UK. I thought I was going to go to school at FSU. I thought I was going to go to UT Austin. But when I went to Georgia State and went to their sculpture building and their sculpture yard, back then it was in a burned out building that had no roof, basically. I just fell in love with the place. And that it was so unsafe. But it was so much fun. Sometimes I don't realize like the things that we did, back then are questionable safety issues by today's college standards.
I know, just within my lifetime of sculpture work, I'm just like, everything has completely changed.
Oh yeah, it's a lot different.
Better, but
yeah, it is for the better because there's, there's a lot of things that happened back in the 90s and stuff that, in early 2000s where, some people, did some dumb stuff, and I'm glad we're learning and getting better at what we do. But yeah, when I just pretty much turned into a foundry person, and then I got accepted to Tamron, which was like, okay. And I got accepted to grad school with George, and then I got accepted to Tamron at the same time.
oh, wow.
I'm really not going to turn down going to Tamron to study lithography. That was like kind of like a dream of mine.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd get into Tamron. I guess I was lucky. I don't know. Maybe I was a good printmaker. That's debatable. But I told George, I said, well, I got accepted into the Tamron Institute, and he was just like, I'll hold your spot for a year or two. You go to Tamron because that's something that is going to be good for your career. And I was like, all right. And so I did Tamron, and then I missed my graduation because I went back to Atlanta to run a bronze pour with the University of West Georgia students, because they didn't really have a foundry back then, not until like Kevin Shun really, I think, launched it off. But they would come to Georgia State and they would pour with us, and we would pour bronze. And so George was busy that day, and I didn't realize this, but he met me at the foundry, and he was all dressed up in like a suit, but you never see Beasley in a suit. and he was just like, okay, I gotta go do this thing. You're in charge. Here are the keys. And I was like, I'm not even a student. And then he said, this is my new assistant, Matt. He's gonna run the bronze pour. And then George kind of like looked over at me. He was like, you know how to turn on the bronze furnace, right? And I was like, I'm sure I can figure it out. Bye. So I ran that pour with the University of West Georgia students, and I missed my Tamron graduation, but I had a great time. I worked with Walt Stevens, and David Landis was still hanging around, and Kyle Dillahay. I think, there was just a lot of, there's a lot of like cool people. I was super excited. But I didn't know a lot about sand casting because I came from a ceramic shell foundry. And so I struggled my first semester at Georgia State because I was lost because I never made a sand mold before. And it took a while. And my studio mate was Matt Wicker. Thank God. Nice. Thank God for Matt Wicker, because I went up to George's office, and George, I was just like, I haven't seen you in a couple weeks, been here for a while. I'm not sure, I've never made a sand mold. And George got instantly frustrated with me, and he pulled a C.W. Amon metal caster's Bible off his bookshelf in his office. And he was like, there's a cope and there's a drag and there's a pattern in there. Like, go ask Matt Wicker. And I was like, okay. And Matt Wicker wasn't real warm and fuzzy to me at that point. And then I went down to ask him how to make a sand mold. He's like, are you kidding me? He's like, how'd you get into grad school? And I was like, he's like, what, you never done metal casting before? And I was like, well, no, I do. I'm a shell guy. Mm-hmm. He was like, yeah, we don't do shell here. So I actually, in a lot of ways, I learned so much just from Matt Wicker. I actually should list him as a mentor of mine, in all reality, because he, I learned so much working with him. And then, then the guys from Sloss came over, and we instantly became like super good friends with Eric Johnson and Alan Peterson. And then we'd spend our weekends just driving to Alabama from Atlanta, which is only a 2-hour drive, and we would go help with workshops at SLOS with Eric and Alan. And then they invented a emerging artist and residency program. Paige Wainwright just sort of, I don't know, found money from the NEA or the Alabama State Council for the Arts or something, and brought me and Matt and Biz Cronfield in to be, at that point, it was called the Emerging Artist in Residency Grant. And then that's how I started at SLOS. Wow. And eventually, once I was done with my 3 years of Georgia State, Eric Johnson was leaving SLOS to go to Oxford in Mississippi, and David Jones came in, and then Alan kind of filled in where Eric was, and then both they were only there for 1 year after Eric left, and both David and Alan went to grad school. David went to Knoxville, and Alan went to Minnesota with Wayne. And then I filled in that position and worked with Von Randall, and I brought in Julie Ward because I was really gung ho to make some ceramic shell. And me and Eric were working on trying to bring ceramic shell casting to SLOS, and I came in and carried that through. We actually did a lot of shell, 99, 2000, 2001, and we were cranking out ceramic shell molds. It was a lot of fun. So we were doing shell and sand and all sorts of crazy stuff. So it was fun.
Nice. I didn't know you were part of that original crew that started the whole emerging residents and emerging artists.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time talking to Rick Batten in my first years at SLOS, because Rick, he was kind of like a ex-patriot of SLOS, but he was like my counselor and therapist. After work, I'd go hang out with him, and then I did a lot of work with Alabama Art Casting too, with Johnny P. Williams. But yeah. So I stayed really close to both. I think those early artists like Rick Batten and Eric Johnson really try to follow through what their vision was for that metal arts program. It was great. We really kicked some butt, and and Vaughn was working with the youth apprenticeship program, and that really elevated all the stuff that we were doing in the early 2000s. Really elevated I think the importance that SLOS Metal Arts plays within the community, and even those early conferences that were out there, they were just I think that a lot of the networking that I still hold tight to, came out of those years.
Yeah, for sure. I keep trying to figure out who all the crew was, like when I got started at Red Top in Georgia at the state park, because several of the guys from SLOS and Tanny Hill would come over and help the state park crew. So I'm like, I keep trying to remember in my youthful brain what 2001 or something, onward, who all was coming, because I'm sure that
I did some pours at Red Top.
Did you?
Yeah. Well, we just went everywhere. They're all blurks. It seems like we were pouring iron every, every couple days. But yeah, I know that we did Red Top. We went all over the place, but we did some stuff with the Tanny Hill crew. That was, I think I was doing a lot of that because I bought a house in Bessemer, Alabama. Okay. And if you know the geography of that area, it was just straight down the street, take a left and then take a quick right past the convenience store, and then you were on the road to Tanny Hill Furnaces.
Right.
So I was right there. I think I was I was even on their board for about 3 or 4 years.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I love Johnny, Williams, and Rick was still there at that point, but then he was at that point he was just picking up and going to Poland. So
that's a big shift for sure from South or mid Alabama to Poland.
Yep. Rick Batten's still in Poland. So
really?
Yeah.
That's wild. So maybe we came across each other back in those days and didn't even have a clue.
We probably did. It's amazing.
It's a very small world.
Yeah, very small.
Do you still mess around with the printmaking stuff much, or do you have time?
I do, and I wish I could do it more. When I started my job at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, I was hired on as the foundry technician. This was before I got moved up to professor. And my boss, who's the dean, the academic dean, Charlene Teeters, brought me in. She's like, you have printmaking experience. I was wondering if you can assist on this project. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever you need. And she's like, well, it's going to be for the Art and Embassies project. It's all being funded through Joe Biden's, he was vice president at the time. And they selected 5, prominent Native artists, Crystal Worrell, Tony Abeda, Dan Mingha, and there's a couple, Jeff Com, who's our paying professor, who just unfortunately just passed away this year, and then Courtney Leonard. And and these we were doing a small edition of 12 prints that are housed in various embassies throughout the world. And then the Bidens got a suite. I got a suite. But they brought me in. They said, we need you to assist this printmaker. And I was like, okay, who is it? They're like, it's Jeff Sipple. And I was like, are you kidding me? And she's like, what? She's like, do you know Jeff Sipple? And I was like, well, he was my professor at Tamarind and he's the best lithographer, I think,
right,
on the planet right now. And I was like, yeah, you just tell him that Matt Eaton's going to help him. And so Jeff Sipple came in from St. Louis and got to reconnect with my printmaking professor. We ran we ran several editions with artists. We struggled. We reinvented ways to do lithography that we didn't think that was possible. We did everything on an etching press. Every single lithograph was pulled off of an etching press. You can do that.
Very carefully, I'm sure.
You get more paper push, I think, in a etching press. You got to kind of hold up the blankets and mess with the tensioners. Make sure you get enough pressure. But yeah, it works amazingly well. Now I just eventually I'd like to get an etching press and I can make lithographs and etchings. And
I hadn't even thought about that because right now we don't have the lithography presses set up at the Frederick Book Arts. I mean, I guess I could carry my stones out to Shepherd and work there, but
yeah,
they're rather large.
Yeah,
I don't want to drag them anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, there's also plate lithography, and there's all these other experimental ways of doing,
Yeah, I've got to figure out that wood process for sure.
Yeah, well, I've been dying to I've been so busy. So I'm the only faculty member full time in sculpture where I'm at. And I want to take a printmaking class with Neil because he does all sorts of interesting experimental stuff. And his class is really exciting. So I want to get back in there. And I have some plates that are just sort of hanging on the wall right now that I need to kind of bring back to life and print up. So I haven't completely abandoned, printmaking.
Nice. Well, I'm gonna put a little bug in your ear. Do like symposium on experimental printmaking.
There you go. We could.
Get some people out there. I will definitely come.
We'll figure it out. Yeah, but there's a lot of great printmakers in New Mexico, so it's a really rich environment for printmakers. I mean, Tackage Press is here in Albuquerque, Tamarin's here in Albuquerque, and there's just print shops all over the place. Actually, one just Ron Adams just passed away, and he had an amazing shop. He was an early Tamarin guy, and so we got a lot of his stuff. His wife donated to our school and various other institutions, but there's just a lot of printmakers. It's amazing. It's a really vibrant printmaking community for sure.
Definitely gotta get out there for all of that. Andrew Marsh has a question. He said, "Hey Matt, how did working with George and doing performance iron affect your sculpture making?"
That's a good question. I was more into, honestly, Andrew, I was always more interested in George's objects. Those were the things that fascinated me because the way George put things together, and he always worked with sheet wax. With the performances, when I was in school, half the time I was in school, George was in Scotland getting ready for the Millennium Meltdown. It was like I didn't have George for a year, and then when he came back after that whole experience, that's when I really got the most out of George. But I with the performance thing, I've never been much of a performance guy, and I struggle to find new ways to do performance since I've been around it so much, because Matt Toole was doing stuff too. He was a student of George's right before I came into grad school, and I actually helped do a performance piece with Matt when we visited Atlanta the very first time, and that was just some craziness, pouring down wood troughs and stuff like that. But I think that George always maintain the idea of a furnace as a tool, as outlet of our creativity rather than the thing that should center everything around. And I think I still believe that with a lot of even though I'm a mostly cast metal person and steel fabricator, I still kind of carry over that teaching of George that, it's a tool. Don't forget that it's a tool. And, for him with his on-site furnaces, those were very inspiring because he left an artifact. I think that's the thing that I liked most about George's performance work, is there was always a remnant artifact to be left and looked at, whether it's the furnace or the X or, the mark making that he made into the earth.
Things over cliffs into the ocean.
But I do love to throw some iron. That's always a lot of fun. I want to get into more of this kind of stuff that Andrew does, and like Chris Myers does, and pouring into wood and stuff, because that's just exciting. And then the artifact that comes out of that, I was hanging out with Chris in South Dakota at his studio, and he's just got this amazing catalog collection of these, remnants from these crazy explosive performative pieces that he's still figuring out what he's going to do with all that stuff, I'm sure, but it's just, that is so exciting to me, so I think very much about that artifact that is the remnant of the performance. I hope I'm answering that question.
Well, that definitely brings me sort of into my question about your art and what really inspires you, because you were talking about that object, like the assemblage and everything. You do a ton of that, whether it's the auger blades and houses and the anvils and different things like that. Really, what started inspiring you and like the story behind some of your pieces?
That's a really good question. I think I started really making a lot of connections, I guess in my as I became more mature as an artist. I took a class at University of New Mexico, and it used to be a class that was really associated with the art therapy program, but it was called Image and Imagination. And it was very much a conversation about how imagination and images develop in art. We read a lot of James Hillman, archetypal psychology. It was a very academic centered graduate course, but we'd also have studio time. And what we would do is we would just start with a prompt and start drawing, or we could use whatever we wanted. We had printmaking materials, we had sculpture stuff, we had this big closet. We pretty much work any way we wanted, and that's like where I started, I think, with the house image thing, and knowing that it's not that original of an image, but I grasp onto a lot of the things that a lot of my fellow artists grasp onto with that simple symbol or archetype. And I don't know, Allison, Kirby references a lot of Monopoly houses. Letitia, she spoke about the Monopoly hotels in her talk at the conference, which was an amazing talk. But I drew a lot of connections. Jen Torres is a person who's always inspired me as a fellow artist, and I've known Jen for a long time. So at one point I was like, I'm just doing similar stuff to other people, but as I started developing, what I started to do is I started to build metaphors with the different symbols. And trying to, find my own, language through it. It's actually kind of stuck. One thing I talk about a lot when I talk to other, when I lecture some places like USD I did and Lamar University, I brought up this notion of a toolbox of icons that an artist needs to carry around with them.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I kind of stole that from Neil Ambrose Smith. He has this app. It's a great app. And I think it's available on both Android and Apple products. It's called Art Ideas. It was actually Neil's thesis, I think, and he turned it into
check that out.
Yeah, it's called Artist Ideas. But it gives you these prompts. It's a really fun app because you can just sit there, like if you're stuck on an airplane or an airport, it's already preloaded, so you don't need internet, and it just sort of carries you through these random ideas. And he's got a list of 100 ideas to help artists with their creativity, and one of them is have a toolbox of icons, and have those things carry over in your work over and over, and build metaphors, and that's kind of a practice that I have been very, I think, successful in, and I've been making work that I actually enjoy looking at, and there's continuity finally. After my many years of doing this, I'm starting to okay, yeah, someone can actually say that's mine and know it. But it's just holding true to those things and building different sort of meaning, and building meaning through simple archetypes. Because one thing I've realized is that what I put into an artwork isn't always what someone's going to get out of the artwork, and I have to be okay. I have to be okay with that. So in using simple icons and images that hopefully people can reflect their own personal experience onto the things that I make, and find their own meaning in the work. Because the more I spend time with a particular piece, the meaning becomes very multifaceted. And it's very much attached, especially lately, it's very much attached to, I guess, a the idea of home and what that means to like the American dream and how it's such a difficult thing or becoming more difficult for certain classes of people. And I think COVID has exacerbated like a lot of that stuff. So now like my most recent piece is a unicycle, you know, with a house at the very top of this sort of balloon thing and with a ladder going to it. Because it's so hard to get a mortgage loan now. And it's probably going to be even worse in 2 years because people's credit, I think, has suffered during this pandemic. And, you know, so I put a lot of thought into that kind of stuff while still using these simple icons. But that's my meaning, you know, to it. Someone else is going to grasp something differently. But a few people have commented on the more recent pieces and really kind of cued into like, yeah, it's difficult to maintain home, especially now. And you know, and those icons, the icons I use the most are houses, auger screws, which I like to relate to drilling and, you know, just sucking from the earth, because that's kind of what those, you know, I don't know, those little houses are. They're those cookie cutter houses that, you know, boom, a neighborhood's like all there. And yeah, it costs $250,000, and most of the people that would like to live there are probably priced out. But then those houses don't last long, and I don't know. And so, you know, those houses, ladders, you know, I always refer to that sort of, you know, while I live in New Mexico, you know, some of, I think for me might be carried over from, Pueblo lifestyle, or even further back to the Anasazi and, you know, those ladders. But I also think of ladders as the steps that you have to climb to get to success. And so I've been putting ladders more and more in the work, and then unicycles and screws and hooks. Hooks are always a big thing in there. I stole that from Matt Wicker too.
I think we've all sort of had our hook phase for sure.
Yeah, you gotta have it. Now all my hooks are like on the ground. They don't actually lift anything up. They actually just are. I think I use that as sort of a symbol of futility, because that was something Eric Johnson did a lot of with hooks. You know, his hooks were always underneath the things that they needed to lift, because back in those days it's lost. We didn't have any way to lift anything most of the time. It was usually dragging stuff through the dirt. And so, you know, I got the hook thing's always been a very important part from both Matt Wicker and Eric Johnson, and just the struggles of being a sculptor that lacks technology to get things done right. And I think a lot of the sculptors out of, like, you know, my generation and the generation before, they really just did things the hardest way possible. And I still do things like the stupid hardest way. I'm like, I know there's an easier way to do this, but that it's going to take me a little bit longer. And I'd rather just, you know, nearly hurt myself to do that. And now I'm getting, like, I'm 47. And now I'm getting a little bit more worried, because I keep on talking to my friends that have, like, you know, you're having like all sorts of, like, you know, arthritis problems. I was talking to Luke Sides last night. He's going into surgery for 2 hernias. I'm just like, oh my God, watching Remy Heineman like, deal with his carpal tunnel, and it's all from grinding. I'm just like, I feel pretty good and healthy. I did hurt my back last week, but it went away. I try to be very smart. You know, like a lot of my students, I mean, those were the good things that came out of that conference, the national that just happened. You know, just making accessible art practices, especially in sculptors, so people don't have to, like, you know, hurt themselves. I thought those were some important conversations to be had. Like, you know, we need to find ways to not destroy our bodies to keep working in this field.
They are it is our tool. It's the only tool we have, really.
It's our main tool. And if you can't, like, you know, if you can't walk, I mean, I was amazed with Eric Johnson towards the end of his life. He was almost completely blind. He might have been the most prolific blind sculptor I've ever, worked with in my life. And, Ivan was, helped him out a ton. And I got to talk to Ivan a little bit about that. And, it was tough. I mean, but Eric he's such an inspiration as an art. I hope he goes down in history as, being one of the ones that really, pushed our visual language of just making the artwork. Yeah. So I kind of went on a tangent there.
I like tangents.
Well, what else, Lauren?
We're drawing quickly to a close, but anything new and exciting sort of on the horizon as we're slowly starting to come out of the pandemic craziness? And
God, yes. I am so busy right now. It's crazy because I'm collaborating with a few different artists on stuff to help them achieve their dreams. You'll start seeing me get tagged by Kenneth Johnson Studios. He's a jeweler. He's a Muskogee Creek and Seminole artist based here in Santa Fe. He does amazing jewelry work. So I'm working on a large casting project with Kenneth right now, and then I'm also in talks of doing some public art with Jean Quick to See Smith, and then I have my own work that's I got a bunch of new things in the fire. I got 3 new pieces in progress. One's going to be an edition of bronze, which will be pretty interesting. It'll be a self-portrait as a house, which will be a leg with foundry boot, and house, and ladder. I'm going to do a small edition of bronzes in those, and those are going to be pretty big, 5 foot tall things. I got a steel and bronze or iron piece that I'm working on. And then I'm going to sculpture trails this summer. So I'm going to do a pretty good sized casting over there, which I'm really excited about. Can't wait to go work with Jerry Massey and the crew of his interns. I think 2 of my students, 1 or 2 of my students are going to be interns, and I don't think they realize what they're getting into.
Right
But I'm like, I can't wait to have you shovel sand for me all day long. I'm going to get back at you. So yeah, I got Alexandra Weaver is going to trails, and I think Jasmine might be, and Jasmine's my assistant right now. She's graduating next. Yeah, she graduates next fall. Super talented. No, but there's a lot of things I'm doing. God, I'm just busy. I'm tired all the time. I can't wait till the semester's over. Because it's been hard to teach. We've been teaching 8-week intensives, so I got crammed the whole semester into 8 weeks, which at first we all thought was a good idea. No, it's not a good idea. I think
only during the summer, maybe. Like
maybe the summer,
can
but
plan for it.
If you're trying to cram, I mean, we have the face-to-face contact time covered because it's doubled up classes over 8 weeks, but it doesn't allow students to have very much reflection time of what they're and to build on it. I just can't wait to go back to normal. Yeah. Oh, the other big things coming up. I'm going to be working with the folks for the International Contemporary Cast Iron Art Conference in Berlin. So I'm assigned to a team to work with Hannah Moknan and Kurt Deerhog.
Oh, cool.
So we're just trying to navigate what we're doing with that. I need a little breathing room from the end of the national conference,
right?
Which thankfully my term of service to that is is over. But what a great
It turned out really,
organization.
really well.
The National, they did a fantastic job. I gotta give a shout out to everyone on our steering committee for making that conference a success. I got a lot out of it. I had a great time. I was almost as tired at the end of each day as if I were actually at an iron, but I was just in my garage. So I was like, God, I'm tired.
Yeah, I completely agree. It was a lot.
Yeah.
I finally just now resurfaced, like, I think February until this past weekend. I was like, I can't do anything with the web team for the international right now. It's insane. So I've resurfaced.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been crazy. I can't wait till things open up again. I can't wait to go travel. I can't wait to go see friends. I mean, I've gotten to see friends over the past. I've hung out with Toby Flores. I've hung out with Noah and Allison. I've spent time with David Lobdell. But I just can't wait till we can all, give each other a hug again. Kind of miss that.
Yep. Especially with this last conference. While it was nice and we could talk, there was still like the major disconnect because there wasn't that constant, like, we're working together type vibe. And so it was like, we're just popping in for a few minutes, drinking coffee or driving to work like you were.
Yeah, driving me. I drove. Everyone gave me a hard time about that. I was like, I gotta get to work. I have an hour commute.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I could drive the road with my eyes closed, probably. But anyway, yeah, super.
Well, I know you've had a long day with the bronze pour and everything else today, so I'm gonna let you hop off and enjoy your evening. But thank you so much.
It was a great talk. Thank you so much, Lauren. I really appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun. We'll have to do it again.
Okay, sounds good. Hopefully we can meet up in Germany.
Yep, that's